Which job is a lot less fun than most people expect? Our first answer comes from Ranger Rudbeckia. Park Ranger. Don't get me wrong, I loved it, but a lot of days it was not talk about cool animals while wearing your ranger hat, and more like the toilets are overflowing again. Go clean the septic tank filter and stir the tank with a shovel, with a little bit of hay. There's a meat out guy down by the bridge. Can you convince him to leave without killing anyone? All for the low price of $26K per year with a college degree. I do closed captioning. While I joke that yes, I get paid to watch TV, it's actually very tedious. And if you don't actually enjoy the programming, you're being forced to watch something you don't care for. Or worse, if it's something I do enjoy like a long-form drama, we usually chop those up into 15-minute increments and split between everyone, so I only see chunks, and not always even in order. It actually ruins the show for me. Working in a flower shop. It's just like any other retail job, but people constantly tell you how fun your job must be. Also, helping grieving families choose funeral flowers is not fun. I'm a marine biologist. I spent the last week measuring defrosted fish heads. Well, I'm a scientist. I don't know if people usually think of that career as fun. But I think people think it's a lot more like Eureka, and a lot less like this data has to be manually processed for 600 hours before I can analyze it. A pediatric nurse. Being a nurse for children and adolescents, everyone in nursing school talks about how much they want to work with kids. The reality is that a pediatric nurse sees more cases of abuse and neglect than any other specialty. Doesn't matter where you are in a pediatric hospital, it's the thing you see most. I've seen so many child services case workers that I've gotten to know some of them and became acquaintances with them. Sure, working with children and adolescents is great, but people don't think about the most essential piece of that puzzle, which is their families. It doesn't matter how good of care you give to those kids, if you don't loop the parents into that care, you may as well just not be doing anything for them. A baker. Coming into work at 3 or 4 a.m. so you can have a 6 and baked goods is miserable. Oh, you must love the way you smell when you go home. Nope, I go home smelling like a burnt oven. Or starting at 7 or 8 p.m. so the donuts are done at 4 a.m. for open demolition. Everyone wants to break shit with a sledgehammer. Everyone is tired of lifting that sledgehammer by 5 swings. Nobody wants to load the broken stuff into bags or a wheelbarrow and take it to the dumpster. I'm a paleontologist. You don't get to work with full dinosaur skeletons and do all kinds of awesome expeditions. You're mostly sitting at a desk looking at some pictures and logging stuff on your computer, maybe examining a fossil occasionally. If you're lucky, you can go on a real dig and, oh my god, spend hours in the hot sun dusting off rocks. Actor. All the ones we see on TV and movies are the 0.1% and incredibly lucky and talented people who manage to thrive in a hostile and overcrowded industry. And even when you are working, the actual job itself is 99% sitting on apple crate in hot makeup, waiting for some grips to move a lighting fixture. Then you say 3 lines over and over again for an hour, and then you wrap. Working in an animal shelter. For sure, it's probably less intense than zookeeping, but the amount of people who apply or volunteer expecting to come in and play with cute puppies all day is absurd. We're basically animal maids. You deal with animals of all sorts of behavioral and developmental stages, shitting and pissing every fucking where. Then you look over and this fucking dog named Chumbawamba swimming in his water bowl. So you got to fill that up 6 times and dry his kennel out. Then you go and mop up the cat room around 10 kittens who want to eat your mop. And also 4 children who are all yelling that there's puke in the floor and I must clean it now. Not to mention all the extra behind the scenes work that the public never sees. How in the summer, during kitten and puppy season, the shelter built to house 500 maximum has 750. I didn't take a lunch or sit at all for any of my shifts for the past 6 days. How the courts force us to put down animals that we know can be rehabilitated, but we don't get enough funding to fight it. How animal control just showed up with the 4th pregnant stray of the week, but intake is full and even double stacked in some cases. So your coworker fosters the cats on her own. Not even to mention the shitty fucking people who do dumb shit and end up getting bit or scratched, and the animal is the one who bears those consequences. I am the proudest shelter worker in the world. I adore my job, even at its hardest. I didn't sit for 9.5 hours today, and I found a cat turd in the cuff of my jeans, but it doesn't matter because a bonded pair of adult cats got adopted today. I took 6 applications this morning, and the cat in bank 4 with the goopy eye is already looking better, and we sent a mama out to foster. The hard work is always worth it for these babies. I want to hear more about Chumbawamba. Chumbawamba was the silky-coated black and brown hound mix. He was super gangly and tall, and had these big ears and was a very good boy, but every fucking day without fail, he'd flip his water bowl, even with no tip bowls. So we have him a heavier, deeper bowl. Every day, at least 4 times a day. Chumbawamba got this enormous heavy-bottomed water bowl filled. It held close to a gallon of water. Weighed about 10 pounds empty and was too heavy for me to even really lift when full. Oh, thought Chumbawamba. I cannot flip this big bowl. It's too heavy. But Chumbawamba was an innovator. Instead of just flipping the bowl, he said, what if I got rid of the water? Then I would be strong enough to flip it. So there goes Chumbawamba, diving front paws first into the bowl and essentially digging the water out until it was empty enough that he could flip it. He was a big thirsty dork, and I loved him even though he super annoyed me when he dumped his balls. Hiking and backpacking guide. Worrying for others the whole time takes the fun away. Being a character performer at Disney. Don't get me wrong, there are some amazing perks and truly magical moments. I know I'm super lucky, and tons of people would love to be in my shoes. But the day-to-day work is exhausting in ways I never thought possible. Guests are ridiculously abusive. I have had things said and done to me I never would have imagined. The company isn't always great, it highly depends on your leadership. And there's so much focus on your body and face, good and bad, that it can be incredibly depressing and difficult emotionally. Plus, you have to accept that there's very little upward mobility. Most people grow out of it, and it's rough to know that one day you'll get too old or too far, and you will have to start all over in a new career field. So you constantly are thinking either 1. What you're going to do when you leave, 2. How you're going to keep yourself there. I personally knew it would be temporary, and I now only work there seasonally while I have a normal career. But Disney has a way of sucking you in. Being a writer, I always thought it was my absolute dream job. But the only job I could get after college was working in a content mill as a blog writer. I used to work 70-hour weeks staring at the computer in the basement of an old bank, writing bullshit articles about the dangers of mold, fence cleaning, and where you need a commercial awning, and the dream turned into a nightmare. While I still write occasionally, I am now working as a communications person, so it is a bit less heavy. Trimming wheat. I don't know why people think working with wheat is like working in the Willy Wonka factory. It's not. You literally get to make tiny cuts with sticky scissors for 8 hours. Being a paramedic. If you work somewhere like Chicago, New York or Los Angeles, yes, you get stabbings and shootings, other varieties of murder on the regular. Most places the bulk of call volume is patients that don't feel well. The adrenaline-filled blood, guts and glory calls are far less likely than the media would imply. Gordon Ramsay wannabe says, being a chef, all the flair and awesomeness they show on Vice and Netflix is far from what actually happens in the industry. It's not all fancy plates and tattooed cool head guys doing their thing. It's a drug-infested, law-breaking work environment that only benefits the owners of a restaurant. Cybersecurity. Bro, the movies do us no justice. Hacking is not as fast nor is it as easy as the media makes it. It's a great field, but you spend a lot of time researching or watching paint dry, especially in the government side. I write adult fanfiction as a side hustle. After a certain point it's just like writing a paper, except you have to keep thinking of different synonyms for a peanut. Barnes & Noble, your job has literally nothing to do with books and it obviously attracts a lot of that type, myself included. Bar bouncer. Hours of tension and boredom interrupted by moments of adrenaline-fueled fear for your life. Then some asshole pukes cheap booze on your shoes. I was 19 when I started, and I thought I would be getting paid to meet lots of girls and listen to live music. Which I did. I also had knives pulled on me, endured threats on my life. Got my nose broken, not even in a fight, and stood around and did nothing most of the time. You don't get to relax, though, because you're constantly looking for trouble. Awful job. I feel that, especially the boredom part. I was an EMT, which pays crap, years ago, and fell into security work where I was security until people bleed / intoxicated / whatever to also get paid crap, but be able to cover bills. It's mind-numbingly boring the majority of the time until I get to de-escalate a situation where someone feels way too entitled, asshole tries something stupid, and, or brief window of very violent danger. Maybe weird, but the boredom was my least favorite part. The best were moments when I helped break up assholes fighting and then got to see attitudes swing 180 when they need to get patched up. And I'm the only medical person there. Airport baggage handler. Yeah, it's fun being able to see parts of an airport people wouldn't normally get to see and drive around the airfield in spare time to have a look at some planes. Especially fancy private jets, but my god is it hard. Long hours, no social life because when you have days off you spend them catching lost sleep. Absolutely horrendous pay for hazardous work. In our training video they showed us the aftermath of someone who had been hit by an ATR 500 propeller and literally just smiled and said, "Don't do this." Also, what some people don't realize is that those bags don't magically appear on the plane. Some are loaded individually by hand. This is called loose load, and not into bins, which is a lot easier. You could be stacking over 200 bags in a space. So cramped you can't even be on your knees if you are tall. Some of the bags/cargo can weight over 30 kilograms, so it is physically back-breaking work, and on some days you may not even get a break on a 12-hour shift, and yes, that happens a lot. But the absolute worst part is the bodies. When someone is being sent home to be buried, we are the ones who put that coffin into the hold and tie your loved one down, and it's not easy for us. My most recent coffin was that of a 2-year-old baby, and my god, I was in tears tying that coffin down in the hold. So next time you're packing for that vacation, remember we are down there. Police officer. You think it's all harassing speeders and killing people you don't like, but it's a lot of dealing with the worst of people. People that want to kill you and the population you protect. Then the very people you save want to bitch about how you saved them. Nascar driver, or just any race car driver in general. You can go at speeds at 190 to 200 mph, and if the slightest thing goes wrong it could all be over, not forgetting you have to push hard the whole race just sitting there. At least they get paid. Try a UFC fighter, same risk, but Dana White gets all the dough. Rapping. There's so many people trying to make it big that it's incredibly hard to break through. Also, unless you're involved in road, it's hard to get people to take you seriously. But obviously being on road and trapping just leads to prison eventually. It's a vicious cycle. I know a fair few artists who have crazy talent, but they've never been able to make it big because they're in and out of prison all the time. User Air 23 finishes with, after reading through this thread for 20 minutes I've concluded that every job sucks.